We're on camera today. Okay, I'm Anna Benson. I'm the Assistant Director for Economic Development for the city, and the James River Arts and Cultural District grant program is run out of the Office of Economic Development, and I'm the program manager for the grant. So this is our second How to Apply workshop. Our first one was really well received, and we decided we're going to, at least for the foreseeable future, do this really about 6 weeks before our next grant deadline, which is December 1st, for this next round. So I really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here. I think hopefully it will be worth your while. And what we're gonna do is kind of run through each step of the application generally, talk about sort of why we have this program, and follow up final report. But it is really open for your questions. You can certainly hold them to the end, and we'll make sure we get all questions answered. But if you have questions as we go through and specific questions, please don't hesitate to ask. This can be a dialogue as we move forward. So my co-presenter today and grant expert in all ways is Mort Sajadian, the CEO of Amazement Square. He's on our advisory panel for this program and graciously agreed to share his time and expertise with us and all of you as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. And Mort, do you want to kind of,
Sure.
so we can, I'll stand over here and you can do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so like I said, our agenda for the day is to give an overview of the program, discuss eligibility for projects, step by step how to complete an application, and also how to complete a final report, which is something that we've always required, but in the past year we have created a document for you to complete that really gives you sort of step by step what exactly we're looking for in a final report that you submit. And then we'll certainly leave time for questions and answers, but like I said, please feel free to ask along the way. This is from the National Endowment for the Arts, and it's a recent economic value of the arts diagram. This is why we do this. We in economic development feel that arts and culture is a critical economic sector for the city. And so a couple years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, City Council created the Arts and Cultural District. And by doing so, they take the amusement tax that's generated in the district, and that is what goes into this grant fund every year. It's not a huge amount of money. It's usually about $35,000, but we hope to see that grow over time as we continue to generate activity in the district and reinvest. So, and it's all because we really feel that, you know, arts and culture is a critical economic sector that we want to see grow in the city. These are our numbers from fiscal year 2015, which is July 1st to June 30th, July 1st, 2014 to June 30th, 2015. 14 projects and activities were funded, including Johnny Cash from End Station Theater Company. We gave $38,000 in grants. The organizations that received grants, their total expenditures were a little over $227,000. So you can see that leverage that's happening with the grant investment and what the total expenditures are. And then we have an estimated 2.3, almost $2.4 million economic impact. That's a huge number, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how we get that economic impact number. It's the city of Lynchburg. We always follow our enabling legislation. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just so you know, the Commonwealth of Virginia has allowed localities to create arts and cultural districts. That legislation was actually introduced from Lynchburg by the delegate from Lynchburg and brought forward by the city to allow all localities to establish districts. Previously, each locality had to go and petition the General Assembly to say, we want an arts and cultural district, and they were given kind of one at a time. But now, anybody can establish one in the state. Sure.
What's the date of this legislation?
2008?
Yeah, I think it's
About 2008.
7 years ago.
And then with that, City Council, right after we were able to do that, established the Arts and Cultural District for the city. Yes. Sure. Margie, yeah, okay, great, yep. Sure. Here is our funny diagram of the actual Arts and Cultural District. Originally, I feel like this was based on sort of where First Fridays happens in the city, and that was sort of the general, and to include, you know, at least the critical mass cluster of arts and cultural activity and organizations in the city. I wanted to mention that there is an interactive map on our website at opportunitylynchburg.com on our incentives page that talks about this whole program, but you can enter the address of your activity or your organization or wherever you're hoping to do your project, and it'll tell you if it's in that. So if you're not sure, you can go in and search the map and expand it and figure out that location. Like I said, our arts and cultural endowment every year is about $35,000. This year we have a slightly less than that, about $32,000 to grant in FY16. We do receive a $5,000 grant from the Virginia Commission for the Arts that augments the city's investment in the program. Arts-related businesses, not related to this project, but as part of the Arts and Cultural District, there are other incentives available for arts-related businesses that exist in the district as well. And the application deadlines are March 1st, August 1st, and December 1st. Previously, we had done this program on a rolling basis, and we realized that we were receiving a certain number of applications and we were kind of seeing patterns and when they were coming in. So we decided to go ahead and establish those deadlines so that we can sort of divide the money more equitably as opposed to, doing it all in maybe the first half of the year and not having anything left for the second. So the next deadline for the program is December 1st. Program guidelines. All of this information is available on the opportunitylynchburg.com website. I'm certainly not going to read everything on this slide, but the mission of the program is to attract citizens, organizations, and partnerships that wish to create and execute projects within the district that benefit the welfare of the citizens of Lynchburg. A project is pretty wide. Can be an activity, it can be an event, it can be a public art project, it can be an improvement, some sort of design improvement in the district. For example, the bike racks that the Arts Council just did is a little different. It's not a performance or a play, but it's a physical improvement to the district. So those are eligible activities. They must show an estimated economic impact, and that really is in attendance numbers and the leverage that the organization is putting into the project.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
That's pretty easy to do with a performance or something, but how do you do that with a mural or a bike rack to say, oh, it really benefits economically in this way?
Right.
So the question is that for performance, it's much easier to identify economic impact, but when it's a site-specific work of art, be it mural or sculpture, how do you do that? So that's the question.
Right, thank you. The public art, we really just need to show estimated public access. So if it's, depending on the location, this could be a traffic study. You could look up, you could say, X number of cars drive down Main Street every day. That's the kind of thing that, it's really not so much if you have 100 people see it versus 5,000 people see it, but how are you just making the case for that piece of work in that location, and how many people would be able to?
So it doesn't have to have a direct financial
Right,
impact.
right. It doesn't need to be a ticket sale necessarily, but you do need to be able to show that it's accessible to the public. Yeah.
And of course, if it's a significant work and eventually becomes a landmark or a destination point, then you can also interject that has that potential to do that, where people would come for specifically seeing the love sign, or
Right.
see the
So-
mosaic mural, or that kind of thing.
And we've had the Academy's mural received funding from this program. The installation on the Bluff Walk stairs received funding from this program. The Love sculpture received funding from the program. So there have been ways to just show, depending on the location of the artwork, how publicly accessible it is really the important piece. Collaboration is really key here, and we'll talk about how that's scored a little bit later. But collaboration are strong partnerships between organizations or entities that are not necessarily In-Station Theater is having a production at the Academy. It's not really a collaboration, that's In-Station renting space from the Academy. A better example might be In-Station is working with Lynchburg City Schools to create a program that is showing at the Academy. There you've got In-Station and Lynchburg City Schools are your collaborators. It's not necessarily your rental. So it's not every organization you touch, but it's the true partnerships. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's a very good point. The partnership is a key element for evaluating one's application. So if you have created partnerships or you propose a project with a strong partnership, that gives you a much better perspective of receiving the funding, because it just indicates that there's more awareness than just that entity by itself coming with the idea. And the more partnership you have, the better it is. Actually, we look at that. We grade if you have 2, 3, or 4 partners, that receives a higher grade than if you only have one partner. It isn't to say that if you have one partner, it's not going to be a good application.
Correct.
But the more partnerships you have, the better it is. And it's also important, I think, as Anna said, is that in the proposal, you clearly identify how are they partners, what are they doing. The example she uses is a very good one to say that we're doing this and we're going to have it at the Academy. Well, yeah, okay, so it's a rental space. That's not a partnership. So.
And this last point, projects must take place within the Arts and Cultural District. That seems sort of like a given, but even if your organization may be located, but you do a performance or an activity at the Miller Center, it's not in the district, so it wouldn't qualify for funding for the project. So the concept is really to drive traffic, drive people to the district. So we want that activity to happen here, which is why they have to take place within the district. It's not enough just for you or your organization to be located in the district. Eligibility, again, we've discussed a couple of these, but individuals and organizations can make application to the program. You're not required to be a citizen of Lynchburg or be located within the city limits, but your activity has to take place in the district. So funds cannot be used for projects for which an entity or an individual profits directly. You can't use it for your fundraiser. If your project benefits the public and it's a fundraiser, that's okay, but it's not a gala event where it's just for your donors, for example. Yes?
What if it's public art for a business that's not a nonprofit, like it shows on a private property, but it would be in a public location?
That is eligible, yes. And the question is, what if it is a private entity or a business, it's on private property, but it's visible to the public? And that would definitely be eligible. The funds are not intended, you guys can read most of these, but I did want to point out that funds are not intended to cover operating expenses. These are project-based grants. They're not for salaries, staff. They're for specific projects. Amusement taxes. This is really a critical piece and one that everyone really needs to keep in mind. The grant is funded by amusement taxes generated in the district. Therefore, projects that charge an admission or use the grant funds must pay amusement taxes. And it sounds, but this is how we continue to grow the fund. So it's something that not everybody really thinks about. So we have a requirement that if you are receiving a grant and you are charging admission for your project, that you check with the Commissioner of Revenue's office. This is all on our website for you to look through in more detail, and they will give you a form that you fill out after your event that says how much your admission tax is. And this is something that you can, if you are charging admission, you include it in your price, or you can tack it on at the end. It doesn't really matter. However you want to make that case to your ticket buyers. People do it different ways, but it does come back to the city.
And you can actually, if you are charging an admission or a ticket price, and because it's required that you do have that element of the tax, you could actually incorporate that in your budget. Mm-hmm. So in other words, that's an expense for you. Mm-hmm. So if let's say you sell $10,000 in tickets, That's not clear revenue because 7% has to go to the city. So you can show that actually you are, in fact, that even makes, if you calculate that well enough and present it well enough, it reflects well on your application because it says that, well, you know, I'm going to give $560 back or $700 back. So that I think is an important point.
That's a great point. Thank you. Okay, we're going to dig in now to each step of the application, and we'll go through these in a little bit more detail. As I've said a couple times, this is all available on our website, opportunitylynchburg.com. If you go to the local initiatives page, there's a tab there for the James River Arts and Cultural District, and you expand that tab, and it has the application, the program guidelines, the map I mentioned earlier, a copy of the final report, so you can look at that ahead of time, all of that information, and also, obviously, our contact information for helping out with anything you need. Okay, this is the easy part. Organization information, just the, you know, name, title, who your project manager is, what kind of entity you are, individual, nonprofit, for-profit. Project start and end date is really important so that we know, you know, when and it may be the same date if it's one event or one performance or a festival or something. Estimated attendance. This is where we'll ask this, and you'll dig into this in more detail in your overview, but this is an important number, and it's important to really be fair, you know. Don't inflate numbers, and we want to see that there's been a thoughtful process for establishing that estimated attendance. If you're doing a first-time project, you're probably not going to have 5,000 people.
Right.
You may want 5,000 people, but let's be honest, you might not. So just kind of put some thought into that and tell us why you think that's the case. So later you can add more narrative about how you've come to that number.
Not only that is very important, but this is very important in terms of if December 1 is the deadline for the grant and you're December 1, okay, you apply and your event is going to take place December 7, it's going to make us think that, well, wait a minute, you know, you want to give yourself time because what if we didn't get the money? Or why are you waiting this long to apply for something that you need the money for in order for it to happen? So I think that's very important that we keep in mind that when your project will start and when will it end and what's the grant period that you're asking requests for. Or, we've had applications where when the application got to us, it happened last week. You know, so that just, and then of course that means series of things you missed out on doing it the way it should be done. So, so the project date is very important that you think about that. I mean, when we read the application, if you've given yourself enough time to prepare it and plan it, even if it's a repeat program, it's much more logical and it's in your favor to not apply for a funding for something that's going to happen tomorrow or next week, because it just suggests to us that you don't have your act together.
Yes.
It's not necessarily the expectation, however, that the ending date necessarily falls within that 1/3 of your grant cycle.
No.
So you've got
What Mort is actually saying is
it's
that
December 1st.
you almost want to do it at the one before.
Right.
So if you know there's a deadline December 1st and your event is on December 7th, you might want to apply in July.
Right.
That would be very helpful, but yes.
And again, if it's not a performance or attendance-based thing, how would you leave that blank, or would you just
If it's,
how many people
No,
walk
well, so
through the
give-
area? Like,
so-
what would the love sculpture be?
So
Attendance-wise?
great example. The example was that if it's not a performance but a specific work of art, how can you estimate the attendance?
Start or end date
What
or
I would do,
attendance.
is say, okay, I am planning to do this sculpture that is going to be outside. I will give a hypothetical. It's going to be outside Bank of the James, and it's going to be completed by April 1. Okay. Well, what I would do is I would actually go to Bank of the James and say, could you give me some sense in the period between April 1 through that timeline you want to give yourself, 3 months or whatever period, how many people regularly visit Bank of the James? And then of course you have the whole building, you know. So you can actually show us that you look into some estimation of that. So just the people who attend there, who come there for daily business,
Traffic pattern.
you got your traffic
Right.
pattern. All of those people are going to be exposed to that.
But also on the project start or end date, if it is a sculpture or a mural, give us an idea of when
Well,
you'll,
yeah,
when you'll,
something
when
like
you
that.
may start working on it and when
That's
it's
easy to
completed.
estimate, but
The
Yeah.
attendance.
However, how long it lasts. We're not, project end date
there.
might not be, how long is the mural gonna be there? We don't,
Yeah.
we don't really know that, but
Right.
when you start
Start
work and when
project.
you're gonna unveil it.
Right.
Correct.
But going through that process, telling us that you have taken those measures to evaluate and guesstimate, reflects that you're not just saying, let me throw a number up and, you know, and then we come back and say, well, actually there are 700 people who go to that building every day, and you just told me that you only have 150 people looking at it. What happened to that? Yes.
My question is about repeat visitors. Do you count those each time they come as an attendee? Or, for example, if you're driving, if it's a public art on the corner, and someone drives by every day, is every time they drive by it an attendance?
Very good question, and go back to what Anna said, that don't exaggerate that. So if the daily drive-by is, let's
Tell us
say,
that.
15,000 people because they drive from Lynchburg to Forest because that's where they work and they go back there, say out of the 15,000 people, they're not going to every day look at that. So that maybe we'll go for half of it, and now you got yourself a nice.
It's really just about,
Yeah, yeah,
it's really more about the narrative.
Right.
And I think if you went in, if you said there are 15,000 people driving by every day, we can probably get
Yes.
to the point that, oh, that means X number a year.
Right.
I mean, I don't, but I
Right.
do think if you say it's 300,000 people,
right.
it's all about how you set up what your number is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. This is just the second portion of that cover page, and really it just, obviously it's, if you have a project leader that's not your director or not the business owner, or then a lot of times it's one and the same. But if you have a grant writer or you have somebody like that, this is just where you enter that information, because we just want to make sure that we're talking to the person writing the application, but that perhaps the money might go to the person that's the legal entity here. All right, organizational summary, check. All right, project summary. This is the narrative portion. This is where you talk about the who, what, where, when, whys of your project. A lot of people miss this date, time, location. It's funny. You know, they say it on the cover page when the project's going to be, in the attendance, but they don't really dig into
Where it is or
where and
when,
you know,
what
it's just
time.
one of those things. So this is we leave this pretty open, but this is where you get the most specific. So don't let the blank open space say, or I can just, you know, gloss over. This is where you really drill into the details of what you're providing to us and the whys. So the project overview, we want to know as much as we possibly can about what you're doing, when you're doing it, to whom, who your partners are, why they're your partners, what your goals and things you hope to accomplish are.
This is important, especially if you substantiate that with a letter or a communication between you and the partner. Often we see applications where it says, so-and-so place is they're partnering with us in this project. Well, how do we know that? We're not saying you're being dishonest about it, but how do we know the level of commitment? So it would be nice to have a letter from that, be it an artist or an organization or a group that says, you know, we are delighted to participate in this event with you, and as we discussed, we will be doing A, B, and C with you. That to us is very important. It means, okay, this is a real relationship here. There's a real commitment here. because that can also help with saying, and our partners are investing X number of dollars, be it in kind or staff time or actually financially. That gives your application that much more weight and bearing. Versus saying that, yes, we have talked to Amazement Square and they're planning to help us with this. Means nothing, really. It means nothing.
And that has happened a couple times when we've funded particularly festival type activities where they say, you know, this organization's providing volunteers, or this organization's going to receive a portion of proceeds, or that, you know, that kind of thing. And if this isn't proactively given, we will make sure that we receive that confirmation before we grant any award. So we'll make sure we receive a letter from, you know,
Amazement Square
WordWorks
right.
that says,
Right.
yes, we are participating and we are the beneficiaries
Right.
of this festival,
Right.
whatever. All right. Economic impact. This is also a narrative section, and that includes our Americans for the Arts Economic Impact Calculator, which I'll explain in just a minute. But this is also a place where we need to be as specific as possible about what you think may be the economic impact of a project. And it can be a description. It does not necessarily need to be, the calculator is going to give us those numbers. This is where we want you to be thoughtful in thinking about how what you're doing affects the businesses in the district. Are there partnerships with restaurant and retail? Can you think about how what you're doing is driving spending in the district by your patrons? So an example might be, I keep using N-Station because Katie's sitting right here, but N-Station Theater is doing a performance at the Academy. They have ticket sales, and they have things that that have a really easy, quick economic impact that you can think about to their organization but really it's, how does a performance at the Academy drive? Does someone go and spend, they buy a ticket and they eat in a restaurant? And that might be 20% of your group, or they shop, or you've got a partnership where if you have an in-station ticket, you get 10% off at Accents. Something like that. So these are the kinds of things that we're looking to drive impact obviously in the city, but in the district as well. Have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's very good.
Okay. This is the economic impact calculator. There's a link here. There's also a link on the website. All these slides are posted on the website too, so you can download this and click through from here as well. But Americans for the Arts has for 20 years. About every 5 years, they do an arts and economic prosperity study where they look at 200 study communities, all sizes, big and small, in the United States, and they do a series of surveys with their arts and cultural organizations, but also with their business community and patrons. So, and actually Lynchburg is going to be one of these study communities in 16. So it's very exciting. We've been accepted to do that. So we will be surveying all of you with Americans for the Arts material. So, but that'll give us even more ability to, I think, use these numbers. We'll receive all of this for Lynchburg, and then we'll kind of see how we fit into the national trends as well. But we use this this will give you, it's a really simple form. You put in the population of your community, which is the city of Lynchburg. So it's between 75,000 and 100,000 is the number. Your organization's total expenses for this project. You can use this calculator to do your organization's economic impact using your total budget if you wanted to share that with the board or stakeholders or things like that. But for the purposes of the grant, only use the budget that you are spending on this project. And then what you expect your attendance to be on this project or event. You hit calculate, and it spits out all these numbers because it's basing these on communities of our size in other locations with similar economies. They kind of look at average tax rates and things like that, and they're able to come up with total expenditures, full-time jobs, household income increases, local government revenue, and state revenue. So this is what we use. We look at that total industry impact number, was that 2.3 million that I showed you earlier in the slides.
Yeah.
Question? Yes.
Yeah.
When you say the number that you're spending, in that instance, including the amount of money you're gonna be asking from you. So it's
Right.
total.
Correct.
It's your total budget.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you apply, the assumption on this end is that you have a budget that you put together based on factual information, and regardless of getting X dollars from from this organization or not, that's your budget. Now, if you get X minus, you may either reduce your budget or find additional funding from somewhere else. But the point is that if you're going to do something, you're guesstimating or estimating that there's a certain amount that is going to cost you. So that's the number that you.
Yep. Great question, Kelly, for
Good
clarifying.
question.
It's not what you're asking for from the grant.
It's
It's
the
your
total.
total project budget
Right.
to do your activity. Okay. Any questions on economic impact? Great. Okay, sources of project funds and budget are the next two very crucial portions of the application. Sources of project funds is who are your funding partners? Where is your money coming from to do this? This can certainly include the money that you're asking for from this grant. That would be a source of project funds that you're expecting to receive. Some examples in here that I've included. Typically, I will be honest, most projects in this grant don't have state and federal funds in them. Some have, but most don't. If you've gotten a, Virginia Commission for the Arts grant and you're using a piece of it for this, I mean, that might be
Right.
applicable, but typically these are not sources. But there's just some examples of things that may be. And then this is the second half of that page, so this one page. Local would be, this is where, an arts and culture grant might be put in. If Parks and Recreation has sponsored an event and is providing in-kind services, this is local government. And then private would be sponsorships, donations, things like that. And this is a word table in the application that can be modified. So you don't have to, you can add as many private sources as you have. So don't feel like you only have one private source or you have to put them all into that. We would like to see that list as long as you can make it. It's to show that this grant money is leveraged by private other sources of income. So all of this can be in the application itself, can be modified to meet your needs. And don't be, afraid to do that. Do that as much as you can, or you need to.
And that section that says status, secured or pending, that's really important to say that, because let's say you have a $22,000 budget for your project and you already have $10,000 in hand from a bank or an organization or corporations or an individual, whatever. That tells us, okay, this is going to happen. They're serious about it. Now, it doesn't mean that if you have most of your funding is pending, it doesn't mean that we're going to say, there's never the chance for this. But it helps to make sure that if you have some committed funding, that you suggest that. And that goes, and then that harks back to what I was saying earlier, that if you have an event that takes place December 7 and you ask for it for December funding, December 1, we're going to think that, okay,
all
by
be
December
secured.
1, if you don't know you have funding for this, reality of life is that you're not going to have funding for it. So that's why that's important to think that out.
Absolutely. And pending, it means you've had a conversation,
Right.
not I might go ask the Bank of the James
Right.
to fund this.
Right.
It's legitimate,
have gone to
conversations,
them
or
and-
you've asked, or you have a commitment or
Waiting
something
to hear
like that.
from
You may
them.
not have it in the bank, but you've,
Right.
yeah. Okay. Any questions on this piece? Okay. This is the project budget. Again, this form, while we like it in this format, columns can be added or changed. So again, don't feel like you have to make something fit into equipment. If you don't have equipment, or if you want to call it something else to be clear, make the change. So the important thing here is that your columns and your rows add up. So to this number here.
Yeah.
So these numbers and these numbers
All have to-
are all here, right? So, and this is something that I get questions about all the time, and I'll go ahead and say that I'm happy anytime anybody's struggling or working through this to look at it with you or sit down and just make sure your numbers add up. So we like to see, the reason we do it like this is we like to see that you've thought through, every expense that you're gonna have and where it's coming from. Okay, so and it can be divided up. So if you have contracted services, might be you're paying a band, okay? And your band costs $1,000, but you're gonna use $500 from the grant and $500 from a private source to add up to $1,000. That would add across, right? But down, it would be 500 in arts and culture grant and 500 in private. Does that make sense? Okay. But that's the kind of thing. We just want to know that you've documented your expenses and you know where your sources of income are coming from and that they all match. So.
And that's the section that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
It's simple, but yet there's a lot of what Anna was saying about the total. A lot of times the totals don't match.
They don't match.
So that it's when you first look at it, it may be like a shocking thing, but it's actually very simple. It's very clear. And Anna pointed out that your contracted services, the funding may come from 2 or 3 different sources. You may have decided that you want to divide it to 2 or 3 different sources. That's fine, as long as it all adds up. So and go ahead.
Personal services fee is what you're charging to do something.
Yeah.
Because it's all contracted.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
contract.
Right. Personal services would be if you have like they're kind of interchangeable on it. Right.
Applying for the grant and then the
Right.
contracted would be.
Contracted out.
Yeah, contract is
Correct.
someone that you hire outside. Like, for example, if an organization applies, personal services is that organization's expenses.
Correct.
Yeah,
And it also most likely is going to fall in this in-kind
In-kind,
category.
right.
So this is the first time also I wanted to point out that we're asking you to monetize your in-kind. Because it's really important. If you can do it, it shows how much, nonprofit organizations, and most of you are, this is critical,
Yeah.
right? So if we can monetize that,
And I saw your head shaking. Begin.
No, I was just thinking, this is a really great form when you're
Right.
doing your budget plan.
Right,
for
right,
every year.
right,
Right.
right,
Instead of
right.
kind of going in
right,
backwards and
right,
trying to fill
right.
this in, you should already maybe have that already done.
Thought
for
out.
each event that you're planning. in the
Exactly,
future,
exactly.
And then just transpose the numbers.
Yep.
Very good point.
Yep.
And nonprofits, by the way, this is very important for you to know for your own purpose, that nonprofits, when you are getting in-kind services from someone or an organization or a company, you don't do the evaluation. You ask them to tell you how much it is. As nonprofits, is ethically incorrect for me, for example, to ask Michael to come and do something for me, and he says, well, I'll make you this sculpture. And if I say, Michael, I think this is worth $10,000. Let me put that. I can't do that. I'm not allowed to do that. He can tell me that would cost you $15,000 if I did that. If that did for you and charge it, that's fine with me. I can sign off on that. So as a nonprofit organization, please make sure that when you do that, just ask the person or the company or someone's going to do a printing for you. Ask them how much would you have charged regularly for this printing? $280. Okay, that's great.
bam,
Right.
in-kind.
That's what you put there.
Yeah. And this shows, in addition to, you may have all these other sources of income, and we certainly want to see that maybe
Yeah.
you have sponsorships or you have donations,
Yeah.
but this is really crucial in
Yeah.
kind, and
Oh,
this is a big part of what
Yeah.
I think we all do every day. So just make sure that you're giving yourself
Yeah.
the props,
Right.
really,
Well, especially
that
if
you
you do-
deserve here.
Yeah, and if you're doing an event where you have 20 volunteers, well, those volunteers are hourly. That costs.
Right.
If you were going to hire 20 people to help you, even if you hire them at $8 an hour and they're there for 6 hours.
So, to that point, there's an organization called Independent Sector, which is a national advocacy organization for nonprofit workers, and they publish each year the prevailing wage for a volunteer. So, if you if you have 10 volunteers, you can go to independentsector.org, and I think it's pretty easy to
Yeah,
find on their
yeah,
website,
yeah.
and it's kind of what they do, and they say that volunteer hour is worth
Right.
$14.50.
Yeah.
right?
And
Or
especially
whatever it is.
what
I don't know what
they
it is
do.
right now.
If it's like someone is
And it-
helping you in development, it's higher. If it's
Yep.
someone working in technical area, it's high. But if someone just doing basic volunteer, is a certain level. So it's a nice range of giving you that
And
sense.
it's a really great resource to use when you're evaluating some of that in-kind work. Sure.
And it's called independent sector?
Independent Sector is the name of the organization that does that. Okay, any questions on this form? Great. Another check mark. Moving on. Okay, budget narrative. This is where we want you to describe, back to Mike's question about what each category is, what you put in each category and what those what those mean to you. So if you have something in equipment, we want a line item, equipment, however much that was, and
What
what
is
that
it?
means. So we are renting a sound
System, right.
system for the event, right? And it costs this much. So this is just where we want you to, in a narrative style, or they can even just be bullets.
One paragraph or one sentence.
Yeah, of what that means. So a contracted service, it's a band, right? So this band at this rate. Make sense? And make sure that all of this matches
Matches.
what you did on the previous page.
So
all
for
your
example,
numbers
where
here.
you say somewhere, you say PR and marketing, well, what does that mean?
Right.
So, okay, well, so we're going to create posters, 100 posters to put throughout the city. Okay, so that's an expense. That makes sense. Or we're going to have an ad in the local radio station or whatever. That's an expense. But if you just say PR and marketing, $1,500,
Right.
we're going to wonder what that means.
This will say PR marketing $1,500.
Right.
Here is where we need to have that breakdown and what that means. If it's Facebook advertising, posters,
Right,
radio,
yeah.
whatever you're doing. Okay. And then you sign it and,
Yeah.
and you turn it in. Wanted to make sure we had all the pages on here. Okay, we have gotten through how to complete an application. We're going to run quickly through submitting and then the final report and then questions. We used to ask for 7 hard copies. I don't need 7 hard copies anymore. We only need 1 hard copy of your application and a PDF copy. The PDF copy is what goes out to the review committee, and we do all of that electronically now. So you submit a hard copy to our office. You can drop it off, you can mail it. We're pretty flexible. And then you send a PDF copy to me. If you don't want to email it, if it's too big, if you have attachments, you can put it on a thumb drive or a hard drive and drop it off with your hard copy, just as long as we have some sort of electronic version of the application. And I do want to note here that certain projects that utilize public space, like
Closure of the
a street closure, Riverfront Park, when it ever reopens, the community market, these public spaces where people might want to have events, have to go through our city special events process for permitting. So if you're not doing this on a private, in your organization or in a private place, you got to make sure you check that special events process for all the permitting that you may need, and that's separate from this process. All that information is on our website as well. Okay.
So what,
Yep.
just to clarify that. Yeah, so what Anna is saying is that don't send the application saying that we're going to have this in Miller Park and it's all set and everything, and then there's no indication that you've spoken with anyone and have actually approval, because then that you're assuming you're going to get it, and that is when you're dealing with the getting that. Yeah, don't assume
Well,
that.
when you go through the special events process and you're on city property,
Right.
there's security,
Right.
police, fire, EMT,
There's
street
lo-
closures, public works, trash pickup. It gets complicated.
And
So-
and all of these actually translate into expenses.
They sure do.
So when you say that, and in your budget you have no reflection of that, the first question we ask, they haven't done it, because
Right.
you don't have. It should be another $1,500 or more for police, this, that, and the other, if you're planning to do that.
Yeah.
So
Did you go to me?
does that? Yeah.
No, you're fine.
I'm used to the days of pass outs too.
We can do that too. Here is our advisory committee. We previously, and we've made some changes to this program over time, we it was a rolling deadline, and when we had some applications, we would call together a committee who, it was a group of people that were willing to serve and would sort of say they were available to review. But we decided that we really needed a group of people that were committed to the program, understood the application, and sort of devoted that time. So we have a standing committee now. Everyone here is on a rotating term, so we'll actually have an opening in January. There are applications to serve on this committee, a little one page that, I'd like to serve, and those are available on our website as well. So if you're interested, we'd love to have your application. I'm not sure who's going to roll off yet, but we've tried to sort of make representation from the various constituencies in the district. So these are our representatives. This group receives applications right after the due date. Usually, if it's December 1st, they're out within the next week or so to them, and we set a review date within those first 2 weeks of receiving, all the applications by the deadline. Everyone reviews and scores the applications, usually in advance, and then gets together to kind of go over that and make any other comments, and then I take all of that feedback back.
Are you an
And-
official member of the panel?
No,
No,
I'm not.
there.
I'm just staff to the panel. So this is, there are five score, I receive 5 score sheets and comments for each application. Just typically this whole process, if you apply on December 1st, you're not likely to get a cut check before 30 days, before the end of the month, because we score them, the committee meets, then staff reviews those, and then we have to make we have to make those
Allocation.
budget recommendations and have that approved, and then we're able to disperse and cut checks. So it takes a little while. Again, go back to Mort's point, if you have an event on December 7th and you're applying on December 1st, it's awkward, so
Should you apply anyway?
probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you
At that
can,
point.
but you are, because one of the things that happens after we score or give feedback, and there's a scoring system, and of course Anna takes that and puts it all in line, and obviously the applications usually ask for more money than there is available, so that what they need to do is to say, okay, well, if this one's got a 99, is more like, I mean, hypothetically speaking, this one is more likely to get closer to what they asked for versus the one that got a 89. So that they kind of go down, and your application, as good as it may be, it's going to be down there. It's not going to be here because obviously, if these others are all 3 or 4 months ahead of time, they've done checks on every one of those details. You just
They're gonna
have to
score
follow that.
higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Because-
if you like the 15th of December, maybe you should wait till next year.
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be, you have a better chance. That's that.
Yeah.
Again, the point is that we are looking for applications that take all these elements into considerations. And if the first 4 or 5 or 6 have done that, and we have funding for that, most likely it would be most likely not the case to take fundings away from these others and put it in something that is kind of not as well prepared. So
And I'll say, we try to fund, if
Yeah.
things score high,
Yeah.
we try to fund everything. However, and I'll just explain this,
Yeah,
is
sure.
we have a very limited budget. We have
Yeah.
about $35,000. If we have 7 people ask for a full amount, we're done. We had 13 applications in the July 1st round.
What is the minimum, maximum, and average?
The minimum is,
Whatever
is
is- whatever you
you
ask for.
request.
Maximum
The
is
maximum amount is
5,000.
5,000 that you can ask for.
Yeah.
Is that the average
No.
amount awarded? Or?
The average
No,
amount
about
awarded
30.
is probably much closer to 1,500 to 2,000.
right.
After all the applications are in, we look at how much money we have, we compare it against scores, and we typically have to prorate down based on those scores, based on what you asked for. So, because we don't have enough funds to fund everybody at the highest. So we take all of that into consideration.
And actually, that's something that is very generous that this organization does, because usually in granting situations that you score, and the top 4 or 5, if there's those really good applications and there's only X number of dollars available, that's it. The other 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11, thank you, but you're not going to get it. So I think the policy that we have is much more generous than that, and that has to do with what Anna's trying to do. But in reality, if you're applying for 5,000 and because of the fact that yours is taking place on the 15th and you only end up getting $750, okay, so is that going to solve your problem?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, take it.
Okay. Then go for it.
Yeah.
Then go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, December 1. Let me also, if I may, so December 1 is a month and a half from now. It's almost 2 months actually.
Oh, 6 weeks.
Yeah. So what we would look for a request, a proposal in that is to see that you have done a lot of legwork already to get you there. That could be
You're there, yeah.
Yeah. Then now we say, okay, well, wait a minute.
This is
They're
gonna
asking
happen.
the funding now is going to happen because they spent the last 3 months working on it. That helps. But what we have seen is cases where they are applying for it, and you look at from the narrative, and everything starts December 7th. I mean, and you want the money on December 7th. So
Yeah.
So I think that's the point that in your application could be helpful.
Sure, Kelly.
So at the end of the day, you want a project, again, it's deliberate and you have a process that meets your goal. But you don't want to be that gap financing when someone has come up with a concept, they're 90% there, and they're just looking for that last little bit of the last minute. That's not.
Not at the last minute. We want to
No.
see that
Right.
this funding is thoughtfully leveraging other sources, and that the project's going to happen,
Right.
that it's probably going to happen even without this, but that we want to, this is a piece of the pie.
And something, oh, go ahead, excuse me.
I was going to ask, are you holding money back for subsequent rounds?
Yes.
So it's sort of
Yeah.
10, 10, 10?
Yeah.
Right.
And we
right.
have, it's hard.
Yeah.
So we have to do that. I mean, that's just because we have such a limited pot. So
So there's
Right.
not an advantage to going for the August round?
no. We try to be as fair as possible to
Right.
make sure that we have enough
Right.
money
Right.
to, now, I will say, anecdotally, we see more applications in the fall, and we always have, because that's when more people do things.
Right, especially with
So, taking that into consideration, that has, we certainly have money still to grant, but we have seen more, I don't anticipate the same number of applications with the next round than I did in August.
So,
So if that makes sense. I mean, it's got a rationality behind it.
I have another question. Is there a limit on how many times you can apply? Like if you apply 1 year, are you frozen for the next 2 years?
Currently there, and
Yeah.
that's something that we're looking at.
right.
Currently, to date, there has not been.
Right.
However,
I've seen that so much.
Right.
we have talked about making that change in our next sort of annual review of the program.
Sorry, I mentioned it.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was going to tell you anyway.
we already discussed it.
Is that we've seen, now that this program has been really in existence for about 4 years, we've seen some projects get the same funding every year, and it's not meant to be that kind of operating project support. So, and we'd like to fund new things, and we'd like to fund different things. So we may, again, we haven't yet, but we may put in a 3-year limit. You can't apply for the same project more than 3 years in a row. So it's really meant to kind of kickstart something until you're mature enough to have other sources of income and be able, compete for corporate support and that kind of thing.
So I think these are very good questions that have to do with really programmatic ends, because going back to what you were saying also is one of the things that A&D looks for is that the quality of the program that you're planning to do, because that's something that it's not something that you can say, let's give it 2 points or 3 points. But what it is that when we read the narrative, we want to get a sense that this is a well thought out, something creative and something that is really, it can add to what we want to see into the arts and culture. So that's a very important factor. One more comment about the question you asked about, how do you divvy up the money? The nice thing about if you apply ahead of time, in December, but actually your program is going to take place in June, let's say, okay? And in December, if you don't get the money, and we think that this is a good program, Anna may come back to you and say, come back in March, okay? So that
Definitely.
gives you now, and then we're aware of that fact that, okay, this was a good program, it was missing A, B, and C, but it's well thought out, and they're serious, they're working on it, so come back in, come back in March. So.
Okay, this is the scoring matrix that the committee looks at. So again, this is all online, you can look at it. So I'm just showing that residency one. While you're not required to be a city resident, you get 5 points for it because we're the city of Lynchburg. So, you can, it's minimal, but that's why that is there. Collaboration. We talked about this at the beginning. This is real collaboration. This is not, this does not include your sponsors. It includes strategic partnerships. So just, and these are all, again, if you have questions about these or you want to run something by us, you can do that anytime. Years of the event. This is something we're looking at potentially changing. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there that we're maybe going to look at changing this. In the beginning of this, we really wanted to fund things that had, maybe had a track record and we're going to show quick success. But now that we've done this program for about 5 years now, we're interested in funding new things and new events and new programs to sort of bring new activity. So you get more points the longer you've had something going on, kind of the stronger your event is. But
next year probably is be different.
We may change that. Yeah. Just FYI, something to think about.
But not now.
Not now. Not yet. Not for this round.
Yeah.
So not to, attendance, audience. Again, you get more points for the more you've done. You also get actually additional points for if you are one of those that have come back and is applying again, and you hit your goal last year that we know from your final report. You get a bonus point. Economic impact. This is really to show that what you're investing, your economic impact is greater than what you're putting in. So, if you're spending $10,000, we expect to see an economic impact of higher. That's typically true. So when you use the calculator, but that certainly is something that we look at to show that return. Other funding sources. This is different from your collaborators. Here are your funding sources. This is where we want to see that you have multiple sources of income, whether they're private, corporate, donations, that type of thing. And then again, your percent of total funding is, are you asking for, if your event costs $5,000 and you're asking for $5,000, it's not going to score well. If your project costs $20,000 and you're asking for $5,000, that leverage is better. We don't want to be the sole funder. You'll score lower if we are your majority of your source of income. The goals of the Arts and Cultural District Vision Plan. This is a document that was created by the James River Arts and Cultural Council. And it's on our website. You can review it. And it was updated a couple years ago, but it really just sort of sets out what the arts and cultural kind of organizations and movers and shakers want to see happen in the district. So we look at that vision plan and say, does this project really fit into to those goals that they set for the district?
To help your proposal, so that it would make it easier for the reviewer to give you points here, in your narrative, highlight that.
Talk about it.
In your narrative and say, this project supports A, B, C, and D. And if you say that and it's highlighted, bang, you make my life easier. Much easier to give you 20 points than me looking through your narrative, looking for that.
Yes, or going back to the vision plan and being
exactly.
Like,
oh, exactly.
We would love for you to do that.
Yeah, if you do that, that's a bonus point.
Great.
Yeah.
These last two are a little bit more subjective, but again, I think these can be clearly articulated in your narrative that you're benefiting the public, that it's open, accessible, it's not a gala for your donors, and that it furthers arts and culture in Lynchburg. I mean, again, this is a little bit more subjective, but something that I think you can really argue and make clear in your narrative.
Those are gimme points, basically, but it requires for you to tell me you want them. If you don't express you really want that 20 points, which is good 20 points, then I'm not going to give it to you.
Is this information on your website?
Yes.
It is, so we
Yeah.
can get a copy of this. So we
Oh,
can-
yeah.
Actually, I will put this, I'm not sure this piece, this score sheet is on, but it's in this PowerPoint is on our website.
Right.
And
Oh, the PowerPoint's
the
on the-
Yeah.
PowerPoint is on the website. I can put the score sheet on the website too, which I'll do this afternoon, because I think that'll be easier for you all to download
I think this is.
than digging into this.
You have with you.
Well, it's starting with your end in mind. You know, when you start a project, and we're going to get to the final report, is look at this, look at the final report, and then work back from that. It'll make your application that much stronger.
Again, this is, one has to thank Anna for that. This is very unusual to see this. No granting agency puts this out there for you to see. So the
They want
intention
you to
here
be
is to help
successful.
you do well because she wants to give you the money. So
I do. Okay, basic, just what we expect once you receive a grant. You will receive notification, when we make the awards, you'll receive notification from me that, yay, you want a grant, and it's this much. And we'll ask you to complete all of these things, and it's just so we can process paperwork and cut a check for you. We do ask that you retain your financial records for the program for at least 2 years. We've not done an audit on this program, but we may be required to at some point. It is tax dollars, so that's something that we may be required to do, so we want to make sure that you all can help us do that. Grant acknowledgement, this is really important. And we're working on developing a program logo for this program. To date, we use the city's logo, which is excellent, and we want you to recognize the city, but we're thinking about making something a little bit more visually meaningful for the organizations that are using it, to recognize that this is a very special program in the city. So that's something that we may be sending out to you guys in the next little bit to get some feedback on. What do you like? What do you don't like? But please recognize the city. This is a program that we haven't had for a long time, and we want to make sure that council realizes that it is a great program. It's helpful. You're using it. You're getting great things out of it. We report on it every year, but the more that the citizens and our leaders can see that this program is effective from you all, the better for all of us. So that's really, really crucial. You have to submit a W-9 form. We do ask that you do all of this within 2 weeks of your notification. I have had folks say thanks, and then we don't get their paperwork for a really long time, and it holds up our process. So we ask you to do that within 2 weeks, and then we'll ask that you submit a final report within 45 days of the end of whether that's the opening of your mural or the event that you've held.
and that final report is really important.
Yeah,
We have not in the past put a lot of emphasis, but I can tell you personally, when I look at this, one of the things that I will ask at our gathering, I would say, hey, these people got money last year, yes, or the last cycle, yes. Can you tell us about their final report?
Mm-hmm.
And if say, oh well, they didn't get it, well, I can tell you right then and there, I would cross off everything I gave you.
Well, I'll
Because-
remind you, which
yeah.
again,
Well, yeah, I
is
know
probably
that.
really unusual,
Yeah.
but I'll be like,
Yeah.
hey, you gotta send in your final
Yeah.
report,
Yeah,
please.
that's very important because that tells us that you put in the period at the end of the sentence.
Yeah,
Basically.
absolutely. So this is the final report. This document is available on our website. So again, I encourage you to look at it before you apply or as you're putting together your application so you can see what we're gonna ask for at the end. But it's some of the, describe it, and this can be some of your narrative, but were there any significant changes that occurred? It happens. If something major occurs, you change the date, let us know. It's usually not the end of the world, but these are the kinds of things that as a funding agency, we want to make sure that we know, how the projects are going. And if you had any other, if this band played and not this band, I mean, that's kind of minor in my opinion, but those are the kinds of things that you would note that are if anything that happened that's different from your original application, if you could include that here.
Unless you said we're going to have a folk band and then you
Yeah.
have a hard rock,
Right.
which changes the whole theme
Maybe
of
let
your
us know that.
concept and project. So I think that you probably want to make sure you let us know
You're having the
about
Lynchburg Folk Festival.
Yeah, exactly,
And
and
then,
then so-
you hire a heavy metal band, changes things.
Are you looking for the income source? Are you looking for direct income and estimated indirect income? So if you want to say, well, as a result, local downtown businesses self-reported that they saw.
No. That's for your
This-
that's for
No.
your
I guess
project.
that's what I'm saying,
So
if we're trying to assess the true economic economic impact of our event, are you trying to get us to do any kind of assessment?
Not
work?
here.
Not here.
Here, we just want to see your income and expenses
Actual
for,
thing you spent.
Okay.
for the project.
Right.
And we want to really see, did it line up with what you said you were going to do? If it didn't, why not? And how did you manage? I mean, if you applied for $5,000 from the program and you only got 25, that might change things, and that's why we want to see that here, if we
Or
can.
you expected X number of people to show up and purchase X number of whatever, and then it ended up being a very cold, rainy day, and half as many people showed up. You still held your event. You were true to your mission and purpose, but you couldn't help. And then you need to say that.
Right.
If it's significantly, and that makes a difference for us when we look at it.
And these are boxes to answer, but how did this affect or advance the district? That might be where you say that. In that narrative response is, this drove 50 people into Market at Main. I mean, I don't know what that might be, but based on your partnerships or your programming. Again, we want to include, we ask the attendance numbers. We ask demographics if you can. If you can tell us ages, if it's a kids event or if it's not a kids event and you had a lot of families, that's something that's, just helps us add to the story that we can tell about how effective this program is. All of your publicity if possible, and here we would like to see recognition of the program in your publicity materials. Images of your project or event. This helps us, like I said, tell our story and tell our funders and city leadership visually how awesome this program is. And then the last thing is a testimonial, and this can be from you as a staff member, it can be from a board member, it can be from someone who attended your event, which is great, what this event meant to them or program or how they benefited from participating. And you can also just be how your organization benefited from the program itself too. All good things to help us tell our story, tell your story. So that's it. And we've asked a lot of questions, and I know it's a lot, but if you have any other questions, you can ask them now, or you can always touch base with me anytime. And I do offer, as much as, within time constraints, one-on-one assistance with anybody that might need, even if it's more than a question, if you want 30 minutes to sit down and kind of hear where I am with the application, what's missing, we can do that as well. So,
Please no handwriting, right? I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
that's in there.
Yeah, I'll just
Type your
say that again.
applications.
Because this program has grown significantly. The
Yeah.
professionalism of this process has exponentially grown since the first time I read the first application. It was handwritten,
Those
couldn't
typewriters.
read it, and So I think that's very important. We take an approach that is professional. I know you may think it's not a lot of money, but actually the exercise of going through this is very helpful in terms of organizational planning, in terms of program development, in terms of what your intentions are with your activity and event and program or artwork, and what the outcomes are.
Yeah.
I think that's the key important. And the better you do that, the better it is for Anna and her team to make the story that they have to tell to the potential funders to expand this. I mean, right now, as she says, it's 35,000. Why not? Why not? If we have a good body of work that is put out, maybe we can go to a outside sponsor and say, hey,
Right.
Bank of the James, put $10,000 in this project because it's good,
'Cause
and
it
they
has
would
this
get their
impact.
recognition as well. So I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, that all helps. So, well, thank you. You guys have been amazing. You'll all be on LTV.
Yeah.
So we appreciate your time, and please feel free to reach out, and please help yourself to lunch as well.